In this slide, we'll be talking about the miller. The miller is in lines 545 through 622. These are three descriptions of how we would describe him. The miller had a thick red beard like a fox or a sow. He can be pictured as a big, strong man. He has big, bronze shoulders, meaning he's strong and buff. And he's very big boned, meaning he's all around just a thick person. The miller is a strong, hefty, dishonest. This is described when it says husky knave. We chose this picture because it paints a good picture of what the miller might look like, a big, strong, thick, red bearded man. These are some of the miller's hobbies and habits and flaws. He's a funny guy, but his jokes are often very sexual and full of sin. He's also a bagpipe player. Known to be a thief, the miller also steals corn. A modern connection we thought of for the miller was a lumberjack. We thought of a lumberjack because they like to drink and tell funny and inappropriate jokes. Lumberjacks are also very strong. Thinking about this year's presidential election, we believe that the miller would probably vote for Trump. We think this because Trump tends to be a dishonest man, and like the miller, he says some pretty funny things. The miller's favorite celebrity would for sure be Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee because they're both very funny. They're very similar in that they have an inappropriate sense of humor, and they both are very, very strong people.
To begin, I will mention that a manciple is someone in charge of purchasing food or supplies for an institution like a monastery. This particular manciple in Canterbury Tales works for an inn of court where lawyers might live. Going down to one of these quotes, we can see that the manciple is a gentle person who sets fine examples. So we can conclude that the manciple is a good role model. When the quote says the buying victuals part, we can see that he sets good examples for other purchasers because, like I said before, a manciple buys food or supplies. If you're not familiar with the word victual, it means food or provisions. The next quote we see that he takes care of his purchases. In the final quote we see that he is a man who can displace the wisdom of a heap of learned men, which says the manciple is as smart as a group of men who are fairly educated. To explain the pictures, I'll start with the top right corner, which is a picture of a wise manciple. And on the bottom right is a picture of an inn of court that is modern today, which is where the manciple is from. Looking at some modern day connections, I would say the manciple is like a farmer, because he supplies food for monasteries or schools, and the farmer spends his money wisely on food or supplies that he may need for either his farm or crops, while the manciple is known for spending money wisely. While on the other hand, he reminds me of just a person in general who thinks that he knows everything. In looking at this quote, we see that the manciple could shame all, while referring to the lawyers that live in his inn of court. And the name of the manciple's blog would be How to Save Money, because the manciple is known for saving money on what he buys. To begin, I will mention that the reeve is considered a farmer. To be more specific, he is a manager of someone's estate or farm. In this case, he manages his master's cattle and resources in Canterbury Tales. The reeve is a slender and choleric man, choleric meaning bad-tempered. The reeve has a shaved head with his hair shortly clipped around his ears, and his legs were very long and lean. The reeve had lived on a heath, which is an area of open, uncultivated land. The reeve is considered an observant man who enjoyed pleasing his lord by giving him gifts. The reeve also was a gifted man, not only at managing his lord's farm, but also with carpentry. The reeve rides a sturdy horse whose name was Scott. He was from a place called Norfolk, and he had worn a coat tucked up like a friar's. There are two modern-day professions that I would list for the reeve, one being a farmer, just like the manciple. I say farmer for the reeve because he tends to his lord's cattle, and he is the manager of what goes on in his lord's land. The second connection would have to be a carpenter, because in the text I mentioned last slide, it had said that the reeve was also skilled at carpentry.